Good evening, everybody, and welcome to a loaded edition of the Monday Smash presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. My name is Tom Lang, and currently I'm riding solo, but that's not going to be the case for very long, as you can see on the screen right now if you're watching on Warchant TV. If you're listening back on the podcast, I'm going to tell you what's coming up. But Ira Schoffel is joining us from the ACC meetings in Amelia Island in just a few moments here on the Monday Smash presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. Wouldn't be a Monday Smash without some Ira, right? He's coming up as our first guest on site, Amelia Island, just outside of Jacksonville. We spoke, Ira and I did, in transparency, for transparency's sake, about an hour ago. Ira needed to get back on the ground and start mining for more information, but we spoke just about an hour ago. You're going to watch that interview. Has yet to be released on Warchant TV. Following that, senior recruiting analyst, senior portal analyst, he's Michael Langston. He's already in the hopper right now. I can see him in the green room. He'll be joining us just after Ira's interview concludes from the ACC meetings. And then capping off the show tonight is also another one of our Swiss Army knives, I should say, at Warchant TV. He's Matt LaSerre, recruiting writer this time of year. He helps us out with team, portal, all that stuff. So we're going to get breakdowns from three Warchant experts as we go here very, very shortly. But first, before we get to that, I do want to extend, for those of you that are in the Warchant TV community, the Warchant community that are not living in Tallahassee currently, I think I speak for you as I speak for myself. My heart goes out to all of you affected by the storms last week, not only in the Panhandle, but specifically in Tallahassee. 3 separate tornadoes touching down in the city of Tallahassee, 2 of them ripping right through downtown, the Blairstone area, and Orange Avenue as well. For those of you who were affected, we are, of course, extending our sympathies, our thoughts, our prayers, our intentions, all of those things to all of you affected. And I see that we do have a question in the chat tonight, Get Down or Lay Down, asking about, will this be a charity show for disaster relief efforts? Not tonight, Get Down or Lay Down. Frankly, we're going to see which organization steps up and will be at the forefront of helping affected folks in the city of Tallahassee. And once we find that organization, we're going to get behind it, and there will be a charity element to what we do on Warchant TV. But for everybody who's been affected, those of you who might be watching in a hotel, listening on your phone after charging it to a podcast, we hope everything turns out as positive as it possibly can in the soonest time frame that it can as well. We are thinking of all of you across the Warchant TV nation. Monday Smash is presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. He is a Nole through and through, top to bottom. If you want to support Noles, who support the program, not just love the program, not just buy the gear, but support the program financially, State Farm agent Russ Voorhis is your man. Again, if you're listening and not watching, RUSSVORHIS.com. That's how you spell it, RUSSVORHIS.com for more information. Russ has offices kind of close to where the ACC spring meetings are happening. Jacksonville Beach, Orange Park. You can see the phone numbers on the screen. Top-notch Nole. Loves this athletic department, not just the football program. Supports this athletic department, not just the football program. State Farm agent Russ Voorhis, serving the entire state of Florida, the entire state of Georgia, and the entire state of Alabama. Consider Russ for your insurance needs today. So, first interview of the evening. This is Ira Schoffel reporting from Amelia Island. We have a chat, the two of us. It was an interesting day in Amelia Island because of comments that stemmed from Tobacco Road. North Carolina, a little concerned about how much money they're making. Interesting times. That and more about FSU's perspective the next few days at the ACC spring meetings. Here is my conversation with our own managing editor, Ira Schoffel. It wouldn't be a Monday Smash without Ira Schoffel, managing editor of Warchant.com. He is on site, but making special time for tonight's program. Live from Amelia Island, site of the ACC spring meetings. Interestingly enough, there's been a development or two, some quotes today. Ira, paint the picture of what you've seen, what you've heard since arriving at Amelia Island. And maybe before we get to some comments out of Tobacco Road country, just your sense of Florida State's presence today and what it's going to be like the next couple of days at Amelia Island.
Yeah, it's definitely a different kind of ACC spring meetings, because you really probably different than any spring meetings of any conference ever, because you have generally what usually happens in these events is they're planning scheduling for the coming years, they're making rules decisions, they're making recommendations about what's going on in the sport. in the, whether it's football, men's basketball, or women's basketball, or some of the other sports. And this is obviously a little bit different because you have, the backdrop to these meetings is Florida State and Clemson obviously are suing the ACC to get out of the conference without having to pay 300, 500, 600 million dollars, whatever it is, or waiting till 2036. Meanwhile, the ACC has sued those schools, and they're back in North Carolina. So you have that going on in the background. And then, as you said, there were some other comments made today by trustees from the University of North Carolina. So it's a weird time. Like, this is supposed to be a time for the conference to be talking about short-term plans, but really, obviously, the big concern is the long-term future of this conference.
So there were some long-term discussions emanating from a university, Ira, that has been interested. The athletic director says one thing, its board says another. You've got a trustee member speaking today on the record, according to, I believe, WRAL. And those comments you can find right now on warchant.com. Ira's got an article regarding North Carolina's concerns. Ira, what possibly could North Carolina be concerned about as it relates to the ACC or the ACC television deal? What could that be about?
Yeah, so again, for people that have been following this story closely, which is probably a lot of Warchant's readers and Warchant TV's viewers, they probably remember that about a year ago, when Florida State had come out publicly and expressed their concerns about just the growing revenue gap between the ACC and the SEC and Big Ten. And, for years, it was maybe $7 million, $10 million, $11 million a year. A lot of these schools felt like you could kind of overcome that with fundraising and just operating your department well. But now, as these projections come out, where the SEC has new deals with ESPN, and the Big Ten's got their new deals with Fox and some of their partners, and now those schools and those conferences are going to be making $30 or $40 million more a year than schools in the ACC. FSU, Clemson really kind of started speaking up last year. FSU more vocally, but Clemson somewhat as well. And at the time, North Carolina's athletic director, Bubba Cunningham, kind of ripped Florida State and said that, all that barking was counterproductive and it wasn't really good for the league. And then a few months later, I guess it was towards the end of the fall, North Carolina's trustees came out and kind of slapped him down and said that, no, we're concerned also. And you got to remember, you work for North Carolina, you don't work for the ACC. Well, then what happened today at the spring meetings, as the spring meetings were getting started, the North Carolina Board of Trustees had their own meeting back in North Carolina up in Chapel Hill, and kind of, I'd say, raised the ante a little bit. One of their trustees actually went on the record as saying he's advocating for North Carolina to get into a different conference that brings in more money. So, again, that's one trustee. He doesn't speak for the entire board. The entire board at the University of North Carolina has not made any decisions that we know of. But again, now you've got a third school, and really probably the highest profile member school in the ACC, kind of at the heartbeat. UNC athletics has kind of been the heartbeat of the conference. John Swafford, who was a commissioner for decades, was a UNC grad. They've always been tied at the hip. So now you've got them coming out publicly, which again, it just kind of dovetails with what's going on with Florida State and Clemson.
Well, this is, a song that has been played out in Tallahassee. It's been played at Clemson, Ira, and some other institutions as well have spoken on the record with these concerns about where's the money going to come from. But that seems to largely always be the precursor to something more strong, to action that's more strong being taken by those member institutions. We could go back to Florida State's very publicly streamed Board of Trustees meeting in which Michael Alford and Peter Collins said it's impossible to keep up with the institutions from, this footprint, the southeastern region of the United States that are in the SEC. It seems to be, instead of an aftershock, like a warning shock that something is coming, that action is coming. Do you feel like perhaps it could be going down that path, or do you still think, hey, let's wait a minute, this could just be one member of the board who's not happy and he was running to the nearest person who would, quote him and put him on the record?
Well, I mean, again, and if people want to read the story, and I'll link back to the WRAL story out of North Carolina. And I think, again, like when these things happen, a lot of times conversations are going on behind the scenes. And so here's a situation where you had basically where it stemmed from is the North Carolina Athletics Department put together their budget for this coming year, and they have a $17 million deficit going into next year. So that kind of spurred the conversation: is what's going on in athletics? Why are we so far? Why are we struggling financially when we've got so much going on at this brand at University of North Carolina? That led to the discussion, which came to the head of, well, wait a minute, why are we in this conference that's not supporting us? Why are we not making enough money? So you had more than one trustee make comments along those lines. They actually are going to meet in closed session over the next couple of days. University of North Carolina's Board of Trustees is going to closed session to discuss this issue and also discuss kind of what they think about Bubba Cunningham, their AD, and how he's handling the situation. And Bubba Cunningham, when he actually, this all was breaking while we're here at Amelia Island during these ACC spring meetings. Bubba Cunningham came out of one of the meetings, and one of the reporters started asking him questions about the report. He said he hadn't seen the report yet, didn't know what exactly the trustees had said. But this is evolving in real time. And again, Bubba Cunningham before came out kind of defending the ACC, and now you've got his board of trustees kind of going after the ACC and also looking at his performance. So again, this is just, if you're a Florida State fan or you're a Clemson fan, you believe more schools that have issues with the ACC or more schools that possibly are looking to take action against the ACC, that should help your cause, because how many legal battles can they fight? So North Carolina hasn't done anything imminently, but this definitely feels, as you said, it feels like they're kind of going down the same path.
It almost to me feels, Ira, like it's good cop, bad cop. The timing of this, really, you're going to make this quote happen while you've got dignitaries down there, ambassadors, if you will, from the university, the ACC meetings. Allow the board to be the bad cop so you can be the good cop when you're down there on the ground. Well, I haven't seen what they're doing. But it does seem to me like the next couple of days, Ira, comments from athletic directors, from other institutions that haven't picked a side, but maybe were a part of the quote-unquote Magnificent Seven, maybe would have a home in, say, the Big 12 or the SEC or the Big 10 if realignment took shape again in a big tectonic way. It seems like those are the types that might say something strong over the next couple of days. Would you agree with that, or are you looking for some juice elsewhere?
No, it definitely could happen. But also what may happen is, again, this just it adds to the instability of the conference. And again, a conference is just made up of member schools. So when you had that situation last year where you had the 7 schools come out, and that was reported the day of the start of the spring meetings, just like this kind of came out, it caused a lot of consternation in those boardrooms. Now you have these ADs and these coaches at these different schools now wondering, okay, what is that school doing? What is this school doing? I thought we were all together. I thought it was just Florida State that was on the outside. Now there's 7 of you who might be looking to leave. Well, now here again, you go to, these schools already know that they're in a legal battle with Florida State and Clemson. And now again, North Carolina is reminding you they're not happy either. And so now as they start having discussions about, okay, what's it going to take maybe to settle this lawsuit against Florida State and the ACC? What are we going to have to do? How strong is this grant of rights? How can we defend it? If you've got a North Carolina team lining up with Florida State and Clemson, that causes more concern for these other schools. So that's, again, I don't know how much publicly will be said. We'll have to see. But I guarantee you behind closed doors, these other schools are very curious about what's going on in North Carolina now.
He's in Russ Voorhis territory on the east coast of the state of Florida, near Jacksonville Beach, near Orange Park. Ira Schoffel reporting on Monday Smash from Amelia Island, and all the coverage from the ACC spring meetings will be coming to you via warchant.com over the next few days. Be sure to follow Ira's work. Ira, it's raining on the ACC's Monday parade today. Is that symbolic or what? Hope everything is good out there for the next couple of days.
Appreciate it. I'll try to stay dry here. You guys try to stay dry back in Tallahassee.
Enjoy that hand soap. Thanks again to Ira Schoffel.
Contact Russ Voorhis for an auto quote today.
From the managing editor to the man who heads up the recruiting stuff. And that's a big list of stuff to head up at warchant.com and on Warchant TV. He is Michael Langston in a drier place than Amelia Island. Michael, first of all, before we get going, Everything okay with you in terms of the storm damage? I know we lived in a pretty similar area when I was down there in Florida. Everything okay?
Everything is great over here. I feel my prayers are with all these people that have really been hit. I know Matt's been hit. His power's been out for a while. So I know there's several people. I even drove around a little bit the city just to see kind of what powers was out. I mean, there's a lot of power. So a lot of these people need your prayers. Obviously, for us, it was just like a regular storm. My parents, they're fine as well. Nothing really serious, so we were very fortunate. But for those people that dealt with the tornado, and even Florida State University and all the people that are dealing with all that stuff with Florida State, we're thinking about them, and we love them, and we hope everyone comes together to help each other, through this tough time.
Amen to that. And we'll have more for you here on Warchant TV as we find the right organization that can help us and help the city make its way back in the areas that were affected. Michael, you had a piece last week. We're going to get to some questions from viewers. Again, Michael joins us here for about 20 minutes, folks. So if you've got questions for him, put them in the Warchant TV chat. Hit the like button. Subscribe to Warchant TV. You know all that. But I'm going to start with something that Michael put on warchant.com as the weekend began, and that's about the wide receiver position. If you watched last week's Smash, we talked a lot of defense. But let's get to the offense today. It's 3 key wide receiver targets to watch for Florida State University as summer visits heat up. So the intel on 3 different receiver targets for Florida State, starting, Michael, with 4-star wide receiver Dalen McCutcheon. What are you hearing about McCutcheon and Florida State?
Yeah, the Dalen McCutcheon's visited FSU multiple times. And it's not an easy trip to get her to Tallahassee from Texas. So it's like a 10-hour drive. So he's really fell in love with FSU. I like how things are trending with them, especially with the visit weekend of when he comes in. He comes in on the June 21st weekend. I really like the relationships that they built, and also just the fit, because that's also one of the biggest things is what kids are going to look for. And he feels that. He feels that when he watches this offense, he sees the nature of what Mike Norvell says of it's built for playmakers, because he fits in that category. He does a lot of different things after the catch. So I think there's a lot of high entry, even though he is from Texas. He's a guy that I feel like FSU's trending for in a good direction. I think the fact that they're getting him in for that last official visit on the 21st is a major deal for FSU, and the fact that he's been on campus multiple times. And we're not talking about visits that are just one day. I mean, he's taken multiple day visits to FSU, so it's extensive as far as what he sees on each trip. And there's just a connection he has with Norvell and Dugans and the offensive staff that I think is really unique and special.
And Michael, to remind everybody, June 21st is the Mac Daddy weekend. That's the
Yeah,
one. They've
yeah.
got a few weekends where they're going to bring kids on campus, and each one is going to have, important players, star players. But the 21st, a
Oh, yeah.
lot of eggs going in that basket, right?
Absolutely, and Jamel Jones just kind of mentioned that of how they've kind of orchestrated the 21st weekend, and they've told every top guy, they want to get them there. Now they're not going to get everybody that weekend, but the majority of them of their major targets want to be that weekend. They want to really nail it, and it's really the last official visit, weekend that you can take, because I think July is kind of a dead period in then certain parts, and in the end I think there's maybe one weekend where you can do some stuff. But it's a big weekend for them, and it's a big chance to really, I think, get some good news. And I think there's, based on how things are trending, there's going to be multiple things I think that'll be good news for FSU coming out of that weekend. So yeah, certainly it's major, not just for with Dalen, but also just the offensive line where they're hosting a lot of guys. So I think it's going to be a significant weekend for FSU.
Second wide receiver that we'll talk about here is Vernell Brown Jr., and that he's got a lot of high-profile schools interested in his services, Michael. But what do you think about this particular prospect out of South Florida?
Yeah, he's a guy that they were on a lot for the last 2, 3 years. FSU's really built their relationship with him. He's been to FSU several times, probably around 3, 4 times. So he's a guy that they've had on campus regularly. Ohio State, FSU has always been the two teams that I've heard the most. You can't count out Florida because that's a legacy. He's a legacy. His dad played there, so definitely a team that's still pushing and certainly be in that three margin of teams. But for the most part, yeah, I continue to hear about FSU, Ohio State. Certainly, Ohio State's really difficult to beat it for a receiver. We know that. There goes without saying, but there's a connection with FSU that's very unique. And two, you're coming off 2 straight years of productivity on the field, consistency. So I think Vernell sees that. He loves what this offense does and how it benefits him. And two, the quarterback room for FSU is very detailed and set, real strong. You have Brock Glenn, Luke Cromahawk, and obviously you have DJ there, and a few others. But it's a very strong room of you don't have to worry about just one guy being able to take over the helm. And the receivers, they want to know who the dudes are going to be at quarterback. They want to know that, hey, they're going to be covered if they do go there. And I think Vernell feels very strongly about. They feels very strongly about the product and what FSU is doing. So I think FSU is very much in there, more so than probably people mention. I would still favor a little bit more towards Ohio State, but I think FSU is very much in there with a guy like Vernell Brown.
So Vernell's from Orlando. I skipped over the South Florida prospect,
There
but
you go.
Vernell and McCutcheon are both a little bit smaller, a little under 6 feet tall. This prospect out of South Florida and Joshua Moore is not. He's
Yeah.
a much lankier, longer receiver out of South Florida that has a big name program really pushing for his services.
Yeah.
Michael, tell us a little bit about Joshua Moore.
Yeah, he's a guy that's kind of blown up in the spring or off season, I would say, compared to those other two. Those other two have been top prospects for a while, where Joshua had to really, go off junior film and then, what he did in the spring, whether it be camps or whatnot, to really boost him up. He started as a 3-star and now he's already bumped all the way up to a 4-star. There's a lot of top programs after him. FSU is certainly one of them. He visited FSU in the spring, I think in April. They really made a strong impression, but it goes back to what their product has been the last 2 years, that is really captivating these recruits. And Joshua falls in that category where he sees what FSU's doing consistently. They're doing everything they said they're going to do. They're going to make this offense built for playmakers. And in every way, if you look at it, where it's offensive line, receivers, tight ends, running backs, they're all seeing this stuff of how explosive this offense can be. And I think Moore really got a sense of that when he visited that in April. I think they're a team that's trending in the best direction for Joshua. I won't say they're a clear leader, but they're the team I hear about the most. So I would say they're a team that's certainly you want to pay attention to. There's other schools. There's plenty of schools in there. I think Miami, Florida, probably Southern Cal, some other schools that are in there that are pushing hard that I mentioned in our story and that breakdown. But Moore is definitely one that is extremely highly coveted by FSU. I will say that all three of them are coveted, but Moore's probably the guy that I hear the most buzz about. Maybe if I might say Dalen a little bit more, but it's close. But either way, Moore's a guy that I've heard a lot of, like, hey, from the FSU side, we got to get that guy. So they put a lot of emphasis in this guy, and all of them are top playmakers. And the one thing they all do, whether it's wide out or slot, they get open, they get separation, and that's the thing that FSU's kind of searching for. The next step in their offense is getting guys with separation.
You could take a look at that too. I know we just we pulled that back down, and that's fine. But on
Yeah.
three is on this particular prospect a little bit earlier than everybody else. Joshua Moore, according to On Three, is a top 10 player in the state of Florida, top 10 receiver, top 60 player in the country. Compared to some of those other outlets, he's going to shoot up the ranks. He's already a 4-star, Michael, but that rating is going to go up, the industry ranking, quite high.
Yeah.
Once the other services match up with what On Three already has him as. That speaks to your point that he's a late bloomer in terms of the process.
Yeah, definitely. And he's just a guy that's really exploded. He isn't just like going out there and performing okay. I mean, he's the best at his position whenever he goes these camps or these events or even showing his film in junior year. Sometimes it takes a little longer to, for guys to start mature or explode to what their capabilities of skill is. And certainly Joshua see the big, or it might be just the case. You know what? People are just too stupid. They didn't pay attention to him, and then here he is, and they're finally seeing how good he is. But either way, phenomenal talent, and certainly one that I know FSU wants badly.
So we'll get to a couple of questions here on the Monday Smash, presented by State Farm agent Russ Vorhis. The first place I'm going to go, Director Ben, I'm going to pick this one. Get down or lay down. He wants to know about the state of Florida and how Florida State is controlling the state of Florida. What seems to be the honey hole, so to speak, right now for Florida State and the football staff?
In the state of Florida, I mean, surprisingly, they're pretty good in South Florida. I mean, that's a place they've coveted and made fertile ground that they're important. You know, Mike goes there every year to speak. I think he was in there, not too recently. Come over there. They do camps there, so it's pretty clear they've made South Florida like a very fertile ground in the state. That doesn't to say that they aren't really good in Central Florida, which I think they do pretty well there in Central Florida, in the Orlando, Tampa area, but South Florida, I think they're very active there. You look at some of the guys they already have from that are on the roster. Conrad Hussey, Lewayne McCoy. All those guys are top players that they want. Daniel Lyons is another one that's good. I can name several more, but my point is like I think that's an area that they've kind of targeted. Like, we want to nail this really good because we know Miami's here. We know they have the advantage of being local, but we want to go in here and make an emphasis, and they see what I've seen for years, that South Florida prospects, for the most part, overall, are just different than a lot of other kids. They're just so skilled, and they're ready to help you right away.
Garrett PCL wants to know about Ernie Sims. Has he helped with
Yes.
recruiting? Has he helped with recruiting? And do you think he had any influence on Auburn transfer Cam Riley?
Oh, there's no doubt that he's helped. How much he impacted Cam Riley, I'm sure he was involved in it when they talked, and certainly he's had conversations over the phone, because that's what Ernie can do. Ernie can talk to him over the phone, and then they're on campus. He can work with him and talk. I know he's helped a lot with the Jalen Wiggins recruitment. He's a local kid that's going through what Ernie went through. So I know he's helped in great detail with that. So yeah, he's been a big lift, and I've said this when they hired him, he was going to be a big boost for FSU, because they didn't have youth in that linebacker room. Everyone looks at like Randy, like the godfather or the grandfather, but Randy does a great job developing. But you need that young presence too, of kids to be able to relate to. So I think they have that, and it gives them that, and it certainly is going to give them a big boost. I think when they get kids on campus, I think it's going to make a bigger impact to what in their linebacker recruiting room.
That's good, because they're on a lot of really talented linebacker prospects for 2025, and you might see quite a few appear on campus next month. Get down or lay down. One more question for Michael before we say thank you for his services tonight. Without spilling too much tea, without giving too much away, I heard Mike Norvell is setting strong boundaries with recruits. I think this is a strong move. What are your thoughts on his approach, Michael, when it comes to, and you can define boundaries however you like, but I think I know what Get Down or Lay Down is talking about.
Why don't you refer it to me of what you think, Tom, so then I can kind of answer it fully.
Probably parameters by which you could facilitate opportunities for young men,
Okay.
perhaps in their name, image, and likeness. But what do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I think he wants kids to be able to profit off, the NIL, the name, image, and likeness. I think he wants that. But I've said this from the start. Mike's not going to be about a guy that's personally centrally located in just NIL. You have to have a plan for what you're doing. What's your plan with NIL? How do you want that to benefit you? It can't be just for a check. It's got to be something that benefits you, benefits your family, benefits your career. Because hey, football's not for everybody. Football's not forever. Football's not a guarantee that's something you can do down the line. So, what's your kind of career plan of what you want to do to accomplish it, and is it team oriented to what you're doing? And most of the guys are that FSU targets, but there's some that are NIL centric that they don't go after. So yeah, Mike's going to stick with what their plan is and what their culture is, and it fits kind of what their culture is. They build a brotherhood there. They're big on brotherhood. They're big on work. Tells every kid, I'm there for all the interviews. The kids say the same thing. If you don't want to work, don't come here. He's telling them directly, like, this isn't for you if you're not willing to work. So they have not changed what their perception or what their standard is of what they expect every year. And I think that goes with NIL. It doesn't mean they don't value NIL. And I think that's the thing people get twisted is like they think, the battle's in and people, and you take care of the NIL, they aren't willing to, covet and value people. They are, but there's a level to it and it has to match up what fits your team, I guess, culture fit.
And then last thing, I could ask that question maybe a little bit of a different way. In terms of commitments and visits and things like that, what is their stance right now? Like if you're committed, are you allowed to go take visits elsewhere, official visits? How do they approach that? Because Michael, it's such a modern time. It's not quite, you can't really lay the hammer down. How do they approach that particular part of the process?
Yeah, I know Dabo over there at Clemson. He's like, you visit anywhere, screw you. I'm cutting your scholarship and you're gone. We're not going to do that. FSU is it's almost to a point where FSU encourages kids if they want to go on other visits. Now there's certain timelines of when you visit and when you don't, where it's like, okay, this is getting a little ridiculous. Then they'll have a heart to heart and say, are you in or out, stuff like that. But for the most part, they want other recruits. They want recruits to compare to FSU. That's how confident they feel about their product. Like we know that when you visit FSU, we have something different that other teams don't have. And so during the process, they want them to make sure they see everything they need to see. We've seen several kids that take that, but I don't think they're like defiant. Like I know at one point with Taggart and certain times, even times with Jimbo, that was kind of like, hey, enough of this, almost like you can't visit anywhere. But I don't think that's ever been in place with Mike. I think Mike really wants kids to compare his program to somebody else because they feel very strongly if you compare them to FSU, they're going to win most cases. In most cases, and so I think that's how FSU looks at whether kids take other visits even if they're committed.
Makes sense. That's why he's got his media policy. He's like, go ahead. I got nothing to hide. Come on in, watch practice, see how we do things. You're going to be impressed. Michael, what's coming up this week in terms of what people can expect on either warchant.com or the video feeds? What do you have for folks this week in terms of the recruiting?
Yeah, we'll have a lot of stuff. You'll have a lot of coverage. I have a story on, I'll have the final hot board, which is cornerbacks. And then I'm also going to do a few either videos or written stuff of talking about the state of the recruiting, where they stand, where they at. Because for some people, I think no commitments means, oh, it's doom and gloom and everything's like I'm going to explain why the top 10 class or even higher, FSU is exactly where they want to be. And I'm going to explain that, throughout the week. So I'll have that. I'll have a few more features coming up. I'll have one who's most likely to commit to FSU coming up the summer. So give you guys kind of a taste of, what the summer's coming. So I have a few of those things coming up, maybe some more stuff to kind of preview, that first weekend and May 31st weekend. I think they're going to host some official visitors. So kind of we'll get everyone ready for that June, chaos of all these official visits. So that kind of gets everyone ready. Matt will have some more stuff. I think Matt's, work on stuff. He's going to share some really good stuff with you guys. When he comes on and relieves me as the closing pitcher comes in to knock it out with Matt, but he'll have some good stuff. So we're going to have stuff all week.
Outstanding. He's the senior recruiting analyst here at warchant.com. Remember, for this information that Michael's talking about, head over to warchant.com. Your first month is $1. Give us a shot. And look, if you say it's not my cup of tea, I like recruiting, but I like the general scope of recruiting. Okay, that's fine. But take a look around. 1 month, $1. Head over to warchant.com. You will not be disappointed. Michael, we really appreciate the time. Hope you have a good night. Good sir.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate it.
Coming up next is Matt LaSerre after this message once again from our sponsor, State Farm agent Russ Voorhis.
Contact Russ Voorhis for an auto quote today.
He's everywhere on warchant.com, and now he's with us on Warchant TV. He's Matt LaSerre. And tonight we're going to be talking a little bit about the portal as well as the 25 recruiting class because Matt, like I said, does a little bit of everything. We're going to be releasing our top 40 lists at warchant.com in the coming week and a half or so. He's a part of that, so we appreciate Matt's time. How's it going tonight, man? I heard you just got power back today. My goodness.
Yeah, it came back on last night and then went back off at about 6 o'clock right before the smash and then came on 30 minutes later. So it's been a whirlwind of dealing with this. Everyone who else is dealing with it, I'm right there with you. I was right in the middle of it. My friends, who's a meteorologist in town, sent me the track of the tornado and went like basically straight through my complex. So it's been a long weekend. And also shout out to Seminole Jeff on Warchant. He let me crash at his place and get a kind of impromptu beach vacation to get out of the dark, I guess.
Outstanding. Well, that's why you do what you do, is for the free beach vacations, obviously.
Yeah.
So, I'm digging that hat too. Good, take down the abs. I would appreciate that if you would. So I want to recap a little bit of the portal, Matt. I haven't gotten to talk to you since Florida State was able to land a defensive back, and he's a familiar name since they were able to land a linebacker, somebody that we thought they were in on the first time around before he committed NC State. First of all, your thoughts on Florida State's portal approach. You were heading that thing up for a long period of time. And how did it come together for Omarion Cooper to reunite with his coaching staff from Colorado? What did you hear about that situation?
Yeah, I mean, that one kind of came out of nowhere, right? Like we were tracking other ones and then literally wasn't even on the radar until probably the morning of he committed. To me, it kind of speaks to how much FSU liked him in general, right? Because if he's not a culture fit, they're not going to bring him back. And we kind of gave the rap to all the guys who left to Colorado that these guys might not be culture fits. Well, clearly they had good thoughts, or they thought good of Omarion Cooper to bring him back. Because again, that wasn't a position of need either. It was, I said it in the video, it was kind of a head scratcher when it first came through, but he's going to be a good addition to the team. And again, it just shows how much the staff likes him.
Yeah, again, what it says, Jeffrey Welsh asked the question, what it says is he left on okay terms. Not everybody leaves for the portal on good terms. Some guys might even be introduced to the portal. But in this case, Omarion, they thought enough of him. What I'll be interested to see is when he gets back in the fold here. They were trying him out at safety towards the end. So where do they decide that Omarion Cooper is going to play? For Cam Riley, this was a guy that before he chose NC State, Florida State seemed to be interested in. How did this one come together? And to reintroduce a question from earlier tonight, Matt, do you think that Ernie Sims played a role specifically, or was this that they had already established things and maybe Ernie might have been in on some conversations, but this was more about previous relationships with the coaching staff from earlier in his portal experience?
Yeah, I think it would definitely be more towards previous relationships, probably more Randy Shannon, Norvell. I mean, keep in mind, Ernie Sims, I don't believe was even hired when he was first coming around. So, yes, I'm sure by the end of it, he was involved in those conversations towards the end because now he's here. But you can't really think it was all on him, right? Nothing against Ernie Sims, but this is probably more of a Randy Shannon, Mike Norvell thing. They were hard on him in the winter window, kind of extended in. This is a really good pickup. I think this is the one we're most excited about because it's at a really good position of need. And Sean Murphy and Cam Riley being next to each other will probably be really good. And then DJ Lundy too. That's a pretty good three linebackers that you have right there to replace Tatum Bethune, Kalen DeLoach, which is a tall order.
So Florida State obviously is looking to maybe add another piece to the puzzle. How many pieces? They've got a ton of dudes on scholarship, Matt. This is, you never question the numbers. They always seem to work out. I know that defensive tackle has been a position that's talked about a lot by me specifically. Everybody on staff thought maybe another D tackle would be a route they go. What do you think about that? And how many players do you think they could possibly add now that they have two in the fold already?
Yeah, so to start off, we think, or at least we're hearing, that they're probably done in the portal. Barring something changing, they're done in the portal for this window. That kind of showed when the Wyoming defensive tackle Gavin Myers said Florida State, or I heard from places, said that Florida State wasn't really a part of the picture anymore. JVR Suggs didn't put them in the top four. It just kind of showed that they're kind of done for this window right now. For the most part, though, again, they did a good job. They're really only looking to get those guys who you want to be productive right away. And also, you have to keep in mind NIL, right price point. A lot of these guys who are in the portal, especially at defensive tackle, it was reported by, I think, Pete Nakos that like the Michigan State kids were asking for up to 100 or 800K, something like that. Like they just didn't want to go and overpay for guys. And a lot of those guys were going in the portal because the defensive tackle market was huge this window, and it probably will be next window too. So it's just one of those things where they did it a lot smarter than other programs, didn't overpay, and they want to get the right guy in at the right price too.
You got to be wise, because then you reset your own market. That makes a ton of sense. We're talking to Matt LaSerre here on the Monday Smash, presented by State Farm agent Russ Vorhis. Matt, you're doing a series about guys that might not be here or in Tallahassee, I should say, on campus as signees. And one of those players is Amari Williams, who it felt like Florida State was going to land on early signing day because he was there on campus and it felt like it's now or never. He didn't sign on early signing day, but he did come around to the idea that Florida State was going to be his destination for college. What did you learn about him? Because you texted me this over the weekend. I was fascinated. He could be playing on both sides of the football.
Yeah, so this was an interesting one. Like, in covering the portal, we all thought, like, well, tight end is kind of one that probably should look at a little bit. And it was kind of interesting that Florida State never really went after one, even though it looked like that could be a kind of gap, especially in the blocking sense. And then found out why when I talked to Amari Williams, because he was like, I asked him what number he was going to have. He's like, well, I don't really know, because it needs to be on one that's not taken on either side of the ball. And I'm like, wait, you're playing offense? Like, what are you looking at on offense? And he said, yeah, they're going to put him at tight end and defensive end. He actually did play tight end before he ever was an edge rusher. So it kind of makes sense, but the way he's going into, like, all in on doing both is fascinating. He's going to an offensive line coach and working on blocking. He's going to a receivers coach. He's basically going to a private coach for almost every single part of his game. And I'm really excited to see him come into fall camp and how that really turns out.
It is fascinating. And you've got a couple more stories on guys who, again, will be arriving here in the summer window. Just tell me a brief preview of what folks can expect and what's coming up on Warchant in that particular arena.
Yeah, so obviously there's one with Makai Danzy already out as well. And then I talked to Jamori Flagg and Manasseh Titi. Jamori Flagg, defensive lineman, 3-star. Manasseh Titi, 4-star offensive lineman. Those will be coming up. Great conversations. Jamori Flagg has some very high expectations for himself that I think you guys will be excited to see.
Fair enough. I mean, that's what you can find on warchants.com coming from Matt soon. But there's also a piece you wrote about a top flight offensive lineman. We saw that one of the Fong bombs last week was for the number 2 interior offensive lineman in the country to pick Florida State. We'll see if Steve Wiltfong, our national director at On3, is indeed correct. But that player is Josh Petty. And you wrote an article, or at least there was a board update. Sometimes I mix those things up. Tell me what you learned about Josh Petty, what you've heard from him. And then, obviously, when will he be on campus next?
Yeah, so to start off, he'll be on campus that June 21st, that huge weekend. And that is his last scheduled official visit right now out of 7. So he's taking a lot more than most prospects do. But Florida State still got the last one. My read when I talked to him, briefly on Saturday, was that his sister coming to FSU or attending FSU as a student is a bigger factor than at least we thought. Steve Wiltfong had reported that before, but when I asked him, was like, so FSU's been in your top schools, even though you've only taken one visit. Why? Like, why are they there? He listed off academics, coaching, development, and then the fact that his sister was there. So I think that is a huge factor for FSU, that it's going to be familiar. He's going to have family there. And also, if you think about it, just being a kid who has a sibling who goes to a school, that's probably going to cause for more visits rather than just going to see the football program. You're going to go and actually experience the university, maybe stay in the dorms, stuff like that. That's all stuff that comes with family ties and stuff like that. And I think that's a really big deal.
So Josh Petty, if he does commit to Florida State, would make the top 2 interior offensive linemen in the country would be committed to Florida State simultaneously. That is something, again, Matt, I don't know the class that Florida State is building right now on the offensive line. Let's just say that they do get a commitment. It's a whole nother ball of wax to get a signature. We understand that. But I can't remember in my time either attending Florida State or covering Florida State that they have the potential to land an offensive line class like they're trying to size up and close on this particular year. How many guys do you think that they could close with or they intend to sign this particular cycle?
I mean, I don't even know where the number ends, because, you got Zaire Addison, who Florida State's training well with. He just took an OV to UCLA this weekend, but Florida State's always been there for him. You got Max Buchanan, who Florida State's been trending with. It goes on and on. Ty Haywood out in Texas is another one that FSU's involved in. Lamont Rogers in Texas, too, just dropped his top 8, and Florida State is in there. He dropped that top 8 today. It's really insane how many offensive linemen are really on this board. On paper, this offensive line class, like 2025 in general, is one of the best ever. even David Sanders is a guy who's around the #1 player in the country. Florida State's not really involved there anymore, but you don't really even need him. Like, you have so many good offensive linemen coming in. Like, yeah, you missed on the top guy, but you're getting 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, it's got a lot of potential to be a really good, just trenches class in general on both sides of the ball, really.
I will circle back to a question on the offensive line in just a minute, but it seems like they're doing the same thing with linebacker in terms of they're swinging for the downs. A lot of big names will be on campus next month. Again, these are high caliber 4-stars / 5-star type linebackers that Florida State is involved in. This is another position, Matt, that's surging for Florida State. How do you make sense of Florida State kind of changing their reputation on the fly if they can get commitments and signatures from these kids? But I mean, even getting these visits and being involved with these players, that's a sign of change for Florida State. What gives there, do you think?
I mean, maybe it's just looking more at the gaps, right? Like you saw last class, they didn't focus much on defensive line, linebacker kind of stuff. Offensive line, they got a lot of guys, but it wasn't your top tier guys that they're getting now. Maybe it's now that we got those other top tier guys at other positions last cycle. All right, let's focus on these other ones. Let's go all out pursuit. Yeah, we'll still get good wide receivers. We'll still get good skill players, but we just got those good last class. We can focus on these other ones now.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And Hector has he's asked this a couple of times. Has Florida State gone after a true center in this mix, or do they think that they can solve that problem after kids get on campus? And Matt, I get it. I'm sure you do too, where Hector's coming from. Like, I got to put Maurice Smith way too high on my top 40 list because, Florida State doesn't have a whole lot of proven, developed options at that particular position. Darius could slide in there if he needs to, but Darius Washington's one of your most important offensive linemen. He's going to play tackle for you. So, do you think that they're prioritizing center, or are they just looking at body types and they'll figure it out once they get on campus?
I think it's more body types figured out once you get on campus. I mean, I remember you got a few guys who can snap in there. I want to say it was Richie Leonard during his portal recruitment. He was like, yeah, I made sure they know I can snap too, and like all that kind of stuff. Like, you got guys there that can do it, who have been doing it. Maybe you don't really have a proven guy, but again, I agree with you. Maurice is still really solid, but it's more of body types, and you kind of teach them. At least that's even what I've seen being out of practice. You don't really get your true center. You want to develop them into that. And who is it who I know you guys like a lot, and I like him too? Andre Otto. He takes snaps at center too, and that's another guy who could come up.
Yeah, Otto is an impressive player. I was surprised that in the spring showcase he was out there at tackle, but he looked like he handled it just fine to me. So as we get into more of this recruiting season, May 31st, there's a visit weekend and subsequent weekends after that. Just take me through your process as you're trying to create stories to make it easier for people to consume, and then what you expect from Florida State in the next 6 weeks or so on the recruiting trail. Yeses, momentum, all that kind of stuff. Just a broad view of where you think Florida State sits as we approach that critical summer window.
Yeah, I mean, this is Florida State's prime time, right? A lot of schools kind of get these commitments early and try to build up the class. Florida State, summer, June, July that's your prime. If you remember last year, it was week after week, all these official visits, about to be the same exact thing. And then July, that first week of July, there was multiple July 4th. There was when the commitments started dropping. I want to say there was like 7 to 10 commitments during that first week of July last year. And it's probably going to be pretty similar. Kids like to do their whole thing around holiday, July 4th. Oh, let's have a barbecue and I'll do my commitment too, like stuff like that. And those are the kind of kids that Florida State's still going after. And I would expect that same trend to happen again. It's going to be a grind in June with the amount of guys, especially that June 21st weekend. I think we're at 21, 22 guys that are coming. And then it's every single weekend before that too. The first one, May 31st, I believe right now is Caleb Falk and Laganza Hayward. As for what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get up with them, get previews going. That'll probably be the main thing to look for. Is I'll start hitting up these guys a week or two before their official visit. Obviously, I already did Petty, but he's a 5-star, so he can get the special treatment of the early preview. So it kind of that's what I normally do, and we'll see how it works out.
All right. So last thing I'll ask you tonight, because you've given us a preview of what's coming up with the work you're doing, and you can head over to see Matt's work at the Premium Recruiting Board. Also, there'll be team stories and things like that from Matt as well. Again, he crosses all boundaries, whether it's multimedia or in terms of the forums themselves. Give me a little sneak preview of your Warchant top 40. Your top defensive lineman that you're going to put in that list, at least as you sit here tonight. No pressure to keep it this way. Not named Patrick Payton. not named Patrick Payton, your top defensive lineman will be who?
Probably Marvin Jones. Between Marvin Jones and Darrell, it's one of the two. I think it's a toss-up between those. I mean, Marvin Jones has been amazing in practice so far, and he's not even a starter at edge probably. Well, no, he could be. It's a rotation. So sorry, like I said, I do everything, so it all gets mixed up sometimes. But it's Marvin Jones has been really good, really impressive. You can tell why he was a 5-star. I'm excited to see him in fall camp, see how he keeps progressing. There's a lot of guys. Again, Darrell Farmer, once he gets back to full speed, there's a lot of things that on that line, even though we were looking for someone in the portal, is still, don't forget how solid that defensive line still is.
And then your second wide receiver. Who are you going to list as your second wide receiver behind Malik Benson on your top 40?
Behind Malik Benson, I might surprise people and go Hakeem. I don't know. I'm getting sick of the Kentron drops a little bit. So, like, I'll go with Hakeem probably, and I put on the weight. If he gets more physical, it's going to be – he could have a breakout year.
Sneak preview, I agree with you. And it's because it's a B word that people hate with receivers. But his blocking is going to be so important with that perimeter speed that they have. He's going to be on the field. He loves to block. Now, I think he can do more than that, and I think he's plenty capable of doing more than that. But you're guaranteeing me that he's going to be on the field to pave the way for a Jalen Lucas or a Toa Feely or a Ja'Kai or a Jalen Brown, you name it. He's going to be that presence like Johnny Wilson on the edge. So a lot of stuff to look for coming up on warchant.com this week. More recruiting content, portal content. Sounds like Florida State is just about done. You heard that here on the Monday Smash presented by State Farm agent Russ Vorhis. Obviously, you've got a regional weekend for Florida State softball. Florida State baseball closes out its regular season with a game at Stetson tomorrow and then 3 with Georgia Tech this week. A lot of content. Florida State spring sports finally making it to the postseason, the baseball turnaround. We get to see that in the next couple of weeks. It is loaded up at warchant.com right now. Matt is leading the charge. Again, head over to the premium recruiting board for more of that content. $1 for your first month. If you're going to give us a shot right now. Did you just hear about how crazy it's going to be in the recruiting trail in the next 6 weeks? Give it a look. For Ira Schoffel, who joined us from Amelia Island, and he will be reporting on the ACC meetings from Amelia Island all week long. He was our first guest tonight. For Michael Langston, senior recruiting analyst. For Director Ben behind the scenes, and the man I'm sharing the screen with right now, Matt LaSerre. My name is Tom Lang. We hope you enjoyed tonight's edition of the Monday Smash presented by State Farm agent Russ Vorhis. Remember, for the live shows, everybody, Seminole Headlines is not happening tomorrow. It's going to be a Jeff Cameron show tomorrow. We're going to do a Seminole Headlines when Ira comes back so he can fully discuss what's going on at Amelia Island. But for Matt, I'm Tom. We'll talk to you next time right here on Warchant TV.